A mob war grows in Brooklyn. On Sunday, the death toll reached 5 when a gunman walked into the Wanna Bagel shop in Bay Ridge and assassinated 18-year-old counterman Mateo Speranza. Officials believe that Speranza, who took 6 bullets to the head and chest, is an innocent victim of the bloodiest mob violence to hit this city in 30 years. The crime family at the center of the dispute is the notorious Colombo clan, sometimes known as the gang that couldn't shoot straight. Here to discuss what all of this means is Brooklyn District Attorney Charles J. Hines, who has boldly declared war on the mob, John Miller, who covers the crime beat for WNBC Television, and Ed McDonald, former federal prosecutor. Welcome. First, let me talk about the legal aspects of this before we get some background on the Colombo family. What 48 subpoenas have already been served?
47.
And you got how many in total are you looking for?
More than 100.
And you will, you think, be able to find all these people?
Well, they've been hiding, and the shooting has seemed to stop. And as I've said, when they hide, they can't shoot.
Yeah. What do you hope to accomplish with the subpoenas?
Well, at minimum, I disrupt their routine. I get their attention. I bring them before the grand jury.
You felt like you were forced to act because innocent bystanders were being killed.
Oh, absolutely. I couldn't let the county become a shooting gallery. I have no plans to allow that to continue.
Would you have done it if there had been no innocent bystanders killed and they were just killing each other?
Sure I would. They have no more right to kill each other than they have to kill anyone else. They cannot declare open warfare in my county and not expect some sort of an aggressive response.
John, give me some history of this. What's going on here with this family, and why are they in open conflict?
Well, I think if you go back, you'll find that the gang that couldn't shoot straight, Jimmy Breslin's novel, was written in part about the Colombos. They've always been a family at war. They've always been a family tripping over themselves in the specter of organized crime. But what's happening here exactly is Carmine Jr. Persico was the boss. He was sentenced to 100 years in federal prison. Long distance is the next best thing to being there, but 3,000 miles away is a pretty big gap to try and run an organized crime family through sending secret messages. His acting boss, Vic Arena, was on the scene, was conferring with the bosses of 4 other organized crime
and
families.
A man who became acting boss at his own appointment or anointment.
Well, at Persico will put him in.
Right.
So thinking that this man was loyal to him and doing his bidding, but you know, a couple of years pass, and it would be like any corporation, you know. You're the acting president, but you've got the office, you've got the car, you've got the executive assistant. You start to get very comfortable in that, and you go to the board of directors one day, in this case, the mob's commission, and you say, guys, vote me in. 100 years is a long time. He's not coming back. You know, why give him an honorary title? It's keeping me from making moves without checking. Things will go better, more smoothly for all of us. And they said, Vic, you're in. Well, now there's a sect of the family that's loyal to Persico, and they're at war with the sect of the family, a younger sect that's loyal to Arena, and the shooting has started.
Who started it? Go ahead.
It's not all about power, though. It's about money. If the Persico wing of this family was receiving what they consider their fair share, there wouldn't be a war. They're not real. That, you know, loyalty and power have very little to do when they're making money. Yeah. And Arena's, I think, major mistake, and I think why they tried to whack him out was that he began to give more and more interest to his group to do what John suggests, to cement his taking over. But it's all about money.
And how important, though, is it for Persico, who's in prison, to see that his son succeeds him?
Oh, very important, because, again, his son will make very, very sure that the Persico wing of the Colombo family will get their fair share, if not more.
Let me turn to Ed. How many people are we talking about here? And the Colombo family, how many people? How do they make their money? How do they compare to the other families? And what about this notion that they are sort of a little bit crazy, a little bit different than the operation of the other larger families?
Well, first, with respect to the second part of your question, the Colombo family has had a reputation for a lot of internal turmoil. Going back to the Galla Prefecture Wars in the early 1960s and continuing through with the assassination or the shooting of Joey Colombo in 1971. I think although the family is essentially has a reputation of being a wild family, and Carmine Persico has the reputation for being someone who was capable of a great deal of violence, the Jimmy Breslin book and the follow-up movie has sort of, I think, caused people to underestimate the power and the influence of Carmine Persico. Carmine Persico has been the boss of the family since the shooting of Colombo in '71. Since 1972, since January of '72, he's been in jail pretty much nonstop. And he has continued to control the family through caretakers, through his brother Alphonse Persico, through his close friend Jerry Langella. After Langella went to prison, when Alphonse Persico was a fugitive, he had a number of other caretakers. When they didn't do his bidding, when he didn't like the way they performed, they became missing. So now he put a new caretaker in, Arena.
I'm sorry, meaning that he did away with them?
Well, the assumption is that James Angelina, who had not been seen in about 4 years, was the acting boss of the family. The assumption is that he was executed. Persico is capable of a great deal of violence. He will do whatever he can in order to maintain control of the family, and with his son being released from prison in 1993, and with his first cousin, Andrew Russo, with whom he's been very close and with whom he grew up, being released from prison shortly, he wants to see to it that these two people who are blood relatives of his are able to control the family for him and for their tightly knit group.
But there's also this aspect that Arena, who I guess was one of the big moneymakers in the Colombo family, alleged to be, was not giving as much to the Persico wing of the gang as he had in the past, and that was an incentive too.
But I think that's part of it. They want the money, but I think it was very important to Carmine Persico that he have his son or a hand-picked successor who was very close to him, who was as close as his son, and you're not going to get anyone as close as your son. Yeah. But if not his son, at least it would be Andrew Russo or some other blood relative actually running this family.
How much money do they make in a year? What's the family?
A few years ago, the President's Commission on Organized Crime tried to give an estimate on what the mafia earned, what they accounted for in the economy of the United States. It's absolutely impossible, as far as I'm concerned, to even get close to approximating how much organized crime or any particular family earns. You know, it's hard to say when someone is associated with an organized crime family. Sure, the people who are members of the family, you can take their income and say that's part of organized crime. But literally, in the New York metropolitan area, there are thousands and thousands of people who are associated in their businesses in some way in the affairs of organized crime, whether it be for a one-time deal or whether it be day in and day out. So I think it's impossible to give an approximation.
But do you have a list somewhere of the 100 or say members who are blood members or who sort of are?
Well, I know who are the members in the Colombo family. I agree with that. You can't calculate the amount of money. All you can talk about is ballpark figures for their different enterprises. For example, sports betting. Sports betting is just off the charts. When I was in charge of the Rackets Bureau back in the early 70s, the gross take in sports betting was around $3 billion a year just for this city. It's now up over $12 billion a year. And it's one of their cash cows. It's one of the things that helps them.
Out of $12 billion, what would you guess that the mob makes from that?
Well, the vig is 10%. You know, that's the.
So that's over $1 billion just from sports betting they take home.
I think that's probably.
And how much from hijacking at the airport would you say?
I don't know. Take loan sharking. If you put $100,000 out in the street and you don't touch the principal, you get $20,000 a week.
Yeah. What are the other crime families saying about this? Do they want this to stop? Are they embarrassed by it? Or are these people from the Gambino family or any of the other families saying enough of this?
Anything that brings heat, the kind of heat that the district attorney here is bringing on the family, subpoenas, anything that brings the possibility that people will cooperate with law enforcement based on pressure, anything that brings that kind of attention is bad for business, and that goes back again to money. Vic Arena has the backing of the other families, so it's hard to say how much of this will be directed at him, but it's likely that they'll try and exert some kind of influence to make this go away.
Why did the hit on him fail that I assume the conventional wisdom was ordered by Persico from prison?
They weren't ready. They planned it out for a certain day. Apparently they had him together with some agent of their forces, so they knew that he would be coming home at a certain time, but he ducked out early, came home early, and the people who were laying in wait for him weren't ready, they missed their opportunity.
I agree with Ed McDonald that you shouldn't underestimate it, but it was sort of comical. It was four silly dopes in the car trying to duck down, so he wouldn't see them.
But what does that say about them?
Well, it says that they're not rocket scientists, but they should not be underestimated.
Yeah, they don't shoot straight all the time. But
Yeah,
if you might miss 3 or 4 times when you're going after someone, but you only have to be on the target once.
And is it possible or likely that somebody might be trying to avenge that attempted hit, not just in the streets of Brooklyn, but also wherever Persico is in prison?
Oh, I don't think there's any question about it. There's no territorial aspect to this thing, other than they picked my county to try and kill each other, and to that extent, it could happen anyway. They tried to kill him in Cedarhurst, where he lives.
Carmine Persico is going to be very careful in prison, though. One of the things you have to remember about him, one of his early cellmates, and this is going back to a conviction that he had back in the late 50s, but one of his first cellmates was Joe Valachi.
Who we all know told everything he knew.
That's right.
Early lesson learned hard.
What about Gotti?
What about him?
Well, what is he?
He is somewhat, although not as seriously, in the same boat as Persico. He's not dealing with a 100-year sentence, but he is off the street. He is in prison awaiting trial without bail. So he's got the same dynamics to deal with, which is I'm sending orders, but I'm off the street. The only thing he does have going for him is he has a reputation as a very tough boss, and these guys have to think, if he beats this case and he's back on the street, we don't want him mad at us. So I think everybody in the Gambino family is behaving themselves right now.
Behaving themselves and not taking sides in this, or behaving?
Oh, no, they've taken the side of Vic Arena in the Colombo
And when they
crime
take
family.
sides, what are they doing? What does that mean? Just giving some moral support, or does it mean more?
I think it means more only because in recent years we have all seen the much higher degree than any of us suspected as to how the families work together, deal together, compare notes, and trade tools.
Whenever I saw this extraordinary interview you had with a Mr. Gambino, what are your sources telling you about when this will end and what will be required for it to stop? I mean, is what the district attorney doing enough to stop it? It
certainly has proven, since we were having one shooting or homicide every other day, like clockwork. It certainly has proven that what Mr. Hines has done is effective. It has stopped the shooting. How will the war be resolved? I think that there's half a dozen players that are going to have to either agree to go the other way or get killed before this is resolved.
You agree with that?
Oh, absolutely.
So there'll be some kind of council in which, I mean, how will they agree?
I think, well, they have a fairly organized structure, and I think the word will get to them.
They'll either sit down or they'll die.
But I don't think you can expect something soon. I think what Joe is doing over the short term is effective, and I think it's going to be helpful, and I applaud it as a resident of Kings County. But I think when the last war that this family had, the last serious war, was the Galla Prefecture War, and that war lasted literally 4 or 5 years.
Ending up with Gallo shooting Joe Colombo, and then 1 year later being shot.
That was sort of a follow-up. That was about 6 years after the war. But when Prefacci died, that's when the war ended. He just died of natural causes. But Carmine Persico was a principal player in that war. Persico was originally aligned with the Gallo faction, and he later made a deal with the Prefacci faction and took his gunmen over to that side. And it was he battling Gallo that carried that war on literally for 4 or 5 years.
You're quoted as saying this looks like a second-rate B movie.
Yeah. Sure does.
Does it mark for you any sort of, what does it say about where organized crime is today? On the decline?
I believe it's stronger than it's ever been. I think if you take a look at the fact that in the last 8 to 10 years, a 6th organized crime family grew up right up in the middle of Brooklyn and Bensonhurst, which has its roots in Sicily, which makes its money for the Sicilian Cosa Nostra, La Cosa Nostra. I don't think organized crime has ever been stronger, and the reason for it is that the public continues to misunderstand it. It's a cancer. It affects so much of our society. Everything he did, Ed McDonald, when he was federal prosecutor, all of the cases they brought, all of the tremendous sentences, has not been able to wipe them out because the public continues to deal with them, whether in the loan sharking part of the business or hijacking, taking swag off the back of the truck is a laughable, expression that you've heard, making money off the books. All of the things that the public deals with. Until they recognize them as a cancer they are, we'll never wipe them out.
Yeah. How close are you to making an arrest in the case of the young man who was assassinated at the Wanna Bagel?
I wish I could say that we're close. We're not. I mean,
Do you know who did it? Do you think you know who did it?
I have a very good idea who did it.
Why can't you make an arrest?
Because you have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt
Yeah.
a case in our system. And we have some other leads on people who have been shot. But these are very, very tough cases to make. Mob hits are among the toughest ones to solve because, for the most part, witnesses who see things are scared to death. They're afraid to cooperate.
Well, the young man, the person who showed up later at the hospital, or right before that at the hospital, refused to say anything about it, didn't he?
Yeah, and I can't force him to talk yet.
What might you do? Why do you say yet?
Well, I have a few things in mind.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.